Hello and welcome to this weekend's market update. So we're going to talk about S&P 500, SPY, ETF, NASDAQ 100, QQQ. We're going to have a quick look at dollar and some stocks which are worth keeping an eye on for possible trade ideas next week, which includes Tesla, Microsoft, and others. So let's get started. I'll try and keep the video short. So you're looking at the daily chart of S&P 500. Now this is where we were last weekend. After this big drop, S&P 500, SPY, the whole market was oversold, and I said that there is a possibility of a bounce, which we did get. And then the area of resistance was going to be these two moving averages, and that's exactly where we see some rejection. Now, Thursday's candle is quite bearish. You see this red candle. But on Friday, there wasn't much of a follow through, although it traded slightly below the Thursday's low, but market actually finished higher. So there was no follow through from Thursday's selling. So that was interesting. So at this point, the structure we have is something like this. So the question is now, do we go like this or do we do something like this? So let's discuss both the scenarios. But before that, let's do this. Let's have a quick look at the weekly chart just to see what sort of things we are seeing on a weekly basis. On a weekly basis, the S&P 500 has been pulling back. So we are on week 4 of this consolidation. It's been forming a series of weekly higher lows. You might say this is another weekly higher low, and this could very well be another weekly higher low. And you can see that it's been consolidating now at the weekly 20 EMA. So this blue line right here is the weekly 20 EMA, and it has provided support a number of times, as I mentioned previously, during once SPY was rallying after the COVID sell-off. Even this level acted as a resistance during the the bear market when we had the bear market rallies. So resistance here, it managed to close above, but then fell back. So this area, this level is quite important. These two, the weekly 20 and EMA. So the weekly 20 EMA for S&P 500 is around 43.39, which is basically 43.39, and the weekly 20, the 50 EMA, the pink line is around 4200. So those would be the two weekly levels to keep an eye on. But I'm keen to see whether or not this level is going to hold. So right now we've been consolidating for about 4 weeks. If you look at the typical consolidation, they usually last for about 4 to 5 weeks. If you look at this consolidation, you can see that this is it lasted for 4 weeks and then it started to move higher. If you look at this consolidation, you can see it lasted for about 5 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we started to move higher. Even if you look here, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then moves higher. If you look at this consolidation, this is about 4 weeks. So typically in an up market, you generally see 4 to 5 weeks of consolidation. So we now have 4 weeks of consolidation, and so far the weekly 20 is holding. And then if you look at the weekly RSI, it's above the 50 level. So I'm not seeing any kind of breakdown either in the price action or in momentum indicators on a weekly time frame. So everything looks fine, and this pullback is within the context of this uptrend. So I don't see any problem there. But the daily looks weak. There's no question about it, because the price is below the two moving averages. These moving averages did provide support on the way up, and you can see RSI is below the 50 level, and you can see MACD has crossed below the 0 line. So it's negative. So given that, so what can we expect going forward? Now, from an economic point of view, there are a couple of reports that comes out next week that we should be keeping an eye on. So let's quickly have a look at the economic calendar. The first one is on Thursday, 31st of August. That's when we get the PCE report. So this is another inflation report, but I don't think this report is going to be very surprising to the market. Why? Because we've already seen 2 inflation reports this month. the CPI and the PPI. So I don't think this is going to show anything different from what we've already seen. So as far as I'm concerned, this is going to be a non-event. But the one that I'm interested is the day after, which is on Friday, and this is the non-farm payroll comes out. So let's see what the market is looking for. Last month, economy added 187,000 new jobs. The market is expecting 170,000, so slightly below, but still the economy is adding jobs, so that's positive. Last month, the unemployment rate was at 3.5%. That is expected to remain unchanged. Average hourly earnings month over month. Last month was an increase of 0.4. This month, expected to be 0.3. This is for the month of July. So overall, if the numbers come in line with consensus, I don't think that should be, I wouldn't expect market to react one way or the other, because these numbers look very much in line with the previous month. So I don't think, market would react either too strongly or negatively based on if, the consensus, if the numbers come in line with the consensus estimate. So those would be the two economic reports I would be keeping an eye on. So let's come back to our S&P 500. So I'll discuss two possible scenarios, one a bearish scenario and one a bullish scenario. Under the bearish scenario, obviously we have a rejection here, and then we have a continuation to the move to the downside, and we break this previous swing low. So if that's the case, what are some of the downside targets we should be keeping an eye on? So I've got some numbers so first one is, obviously, if we have this, this would be the last week's low. So that number is 43.35. So if that number is breached, the next level is this number I'm looking at, which is around 42.90. So where do I get this? See this candle right here. This is a nasty looking candle. If you take the full range of this candle and you double it, that's when you get this number. So a full measured move of this candle is this number, 42.90. And half measured move is this number right here. Sometimes what happens, the market doesn't give you the full measured move. Sometimes it just gives you the half measured move, in which case it could very well be like a retest of this low. And in fact, a quarter of this range is this low. So that's basically where it found support. So the quarter is this one, half is this level, and full is this level right here. So if we do like this, that's basically would be the worst case scenario. And I would expect some kind of a reaction here, maybe a bounce. So those would be the levels I'm looking out for. So the first level is this one, Friday's low, which is 43.56. And then last week's low, 43.35. And then 42.90, which would be the full measured move of this red candle right here. So that's on the bearish side. What's the bullish side? Bullish side is, see this Friday's candle looks interesting to me because there was no follow through, which means the bears had an opportunity to basically take the market down below this, but that didn't happen. So if that's the case, then the possibility exists that the market rallies and goes above these moving average, the daily 20 and 50 EMA. So the pattern would then look something like this. This is a positive looking pattern. Now, I want to show you, this pattern slightly differently. So if I look at this chart, so instead of looking at it on a daily candle, so this is a 2-day candle. And if I look at the line chart, you can see, I'm beginning to see like a double bottom formation there. When you look at it on a 2-day, when each candle is like a 2-day, so that's basically what I'm seeing. So this is like a positive looking candle, and this is perhaps giving us a clue that market probably wants to move higher rather than lower. So if you look at it on a daily basis, you can see that market didn't follow through. If market can close above this level, it takes out the moving averages, then this could very well be something like this. So I'm watching to see whether it becomes something like this. Also, if you look at the RSI, so RSI, you can see that it has fallen to this level, rebounded. There's a shallow pullback. If RSI does this and closes above the 50 level, I think that would be quite positive. And then if RSI pulls back and retests the 50 and then does that like this, then I think the market is going to move higher. So that's another thing that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the RSI because you can see RSI was rejected at the 50 level. So I'm looking to see whether or not, see, this is a shallow pullback on RSI. I want to see whether RSI can do that. If that happens and you see RSI close above 50 and then you see a retest, that would be positive. On the 2-day chart that I was showing you, you can see where RSI is just under 50. If RSI closes above the 50 level, like this way on a 2-day basis also, so I'm seeing some positive thing on RSI and also on the price action, so that tells me that I think we should be open to the fact that the market could take out these two moving averages, next week. Now, obviously, until that happens, the chart remains negative because, the price is underneath the moving averages. MACD is still moving lower, although it's beginning to kind of curl, but we need to wait until it does something like this. We need confirmation. We need RSI to do something like this. Until that happens, the price action momentum indicators are still weak, but I am keeping an eye for a possible, move like this. So that's as far as S&P 500 is concerned. What are some of the levels on SPY to keep an eye on? So on SPY then, the levels to keep an eye, last week's low, which is, 433, and then this level, which is around 428. If we get a full measured move, that would be 428 on the downside. On the other hand, if we have a rally and SPY is able to close above the moving averages, let's call it this candle. This candle is, I think, 445. If SPY closes above 445 like this way, then you have a shape like this, which I think is positive. You can see the SPY sort of creating that when you look at it on a two-day basis. So you can see kind of a double bottom formation. Now, obviously, it can always do something like this and invalidate this pattern. So we have to, while the setup is there, we need to see it in action. So those would be the levels I'm keeping an eye on for SPY and S&P 500. So let's quickly move to NASDAQ 100. So again, NASDAQ 100, similar. We had a rally from the oversold level and then big rejection. The price closed underneath both of the moving averages. So if we have a bearish scenario, the first level is this one, which is last week's low, and then the next level is this one. And this is basically full measured move of this distance. And this is where, this is around 14,329. So that would be the last week's low was around 14,569. So those would be the levels I'm watching on the downside under the bearish scenario. And on the positive side, if it does that and closes above these two moving averages and finally takes out this level, that I think is going to be positive. On a weekly basis, again, if you look at the weekly basis, it's still consolidating just like S&P 500. We are in week 4 of this consolidation, and this consolidation is happening above the weekly 20 EMA. And you can see that on a weekly basis, number of weekly highs. So this could well be another weekly high. It could do something like this. So this is the level I'm watching to see whether it can hold. We're in week 4. You can see the weekly 20 EMA was a support here, a number of times. and was a resistance right here. You see the weekly, the two moving averages during the bear market acted as resistance right here. And then when it finally decided to move higher, it came and retested this and then started to move higher. This would be the first time it's going to retest the weekly 20 after this level. So and if you see RSI is above the 50 level. So on a weekly basis, I'm not seeing any kind of breakdown either on the price or on the momentum. It's only on the daily that we're seeing some weakness, which is fine, because as long as the weekly holds up but there is weakness on the daily, I would say that the weakness on a daily is temporary. The only thing that would make me nervous would be if I see RSI underneath the 50 and then stays underneath the 50, like we saw back in 2022, and the price falls below the daily 20 and eventually falls below the weekly 20 and weekly 50, much like what we saw right here, and that would be a cause for concern, because that would basically invalidate this uptrend. But we're not there yet. Until that time, I'm more inclined to believe that this consolidation is, it's a temporary consolidation. But we talked about both the bearish scenario and the bullish scenario, and if I show you the same thing on a 2-day basis, you'll see that it's forming this shape, and you can already see on a 2-day basis it has closed above this previous high right here. So that to me looks like a positive development, but I need more confirmation. If you look at the RSI on a 2-day basis, it closed just above 50 right here. It's at 50.24, but I need to see convincing move above the 50 and maybe a retest and do something like this. So that's telling me that maybe the market wants to go higher rather than lower. I mean, I could be wrong, but based on what I'm seeing on a 2-day basis, that's basically my lean. On QQQ, what's the level? So on QQQ, on the downside, obviously last week's low right here. So last week's low was around 355. And then underneath this is this level, which is around 350. So those would be the 355, 350. Those would be the levels on the upside, and on the downside. On the upside, obviously taking out these two moving averages, they're around 367. This one is at 367, and then the top of this weekly this red candle is 373. So those would be the levels I'll be watching. So that's QQQ. Now let's quickly have a look at dollar, and then we'll move on to the individual names. So here's dollar. So if you look at, let me just get rid of the moving averages. The dollar chart looks quite strong to me. You can see that it's been, moving higher. Obviously, higher bond yields is contributing. It has now taken out this level. You can see the momentum indicators look quite strong to me. And next level is this area right here, which is around 104.7. So that would be the next area. Even on a weekly basis, if you look at it on a weekly basis, you can see that RSI is now above the 50, looking higher. You can see RSI has made higher high. So this high is higher than this high. This higher is higher than this high. So that's looking good. MACD is now moving towards the zero line, but dollar looks strong to me. On a short-term basis, can we see some kind of a profit taking? Possible, but I wouldn't be overly bearish on dollar at this point, because that just looks quite strong to me. All right, let's look at some of the individual stocks which I think are worth keeping an eye on now. The first one, I'm going to start off with Tesla, because I'm seeing something in Tesla which tells me that Tesla wants to go higher. So if you look at this structure right here, you can see that big drop right here, and then rebound from oversold level, and then a shallow pullback, and then it's coming back to this level again. So this is around 241. So if it's able to do something like this and then come back and retest it, I think that is quite positive. So this one is looking positive to me. And if you look at, so I'm looking at a 4-hour basis, but the same applies to on a daily basis. And you can see that on a 4-hour basis, RSI has moved above the 50 level. This is when on a 4-hour basis, RSI fell below the 50 level, right at this candle. And it remained under the 50 level throughout, and you can see weak price action. But now, you can see that it was rejection right at 50, but it managed to close on Friday just above. This is on a 4-hour basis. If you look at on a daily basis, the RSI hasn't closed above the 50 yet. So you can see that, so I would need to see RSI close above 50 on a daily basis. And I would, and if it can close on a daily basis above 241, I think that would indicate that Tesla wants to go higher. So if Tesla wants to go higher, what are some of the levels we should be looking out? First level is this level right here, which is around, what level? Which is around 256. And then the next level is this one right here. So this level is around 272. So those would be the levels. And then if it breaks underneath this level, if it closes, then it invalidates this consolidation. This consolidation looks quite positive to me. Now, if it does something like this, then obviously that's not good. But on the other hand, if it does something like this, you've got a bullish looking, if you look at the 2-day setup of Tesla, so this looks positive. You can see that it already closed above the previous high right here. So to me, this setup looks positive to me. But obviously I need confirmation from RSI. Unless RSI gets back above the 50 on a daily basis, then obviously I still have to be cautious. Only when I see daily RSI get back above 50 and hold, retest would be positive, that would be great. But I'm watching Tesla. This one looks positive to me. If you look at, let's see, Microsoft, similar looking chart. So on Microsoft, what I'm looking for is this. If Tesla moves up, then Microsoft is going to move up also. You can see that Microsoft, after it reached here, moved up to the daily 20 and 50 EMA and then pullback, shallow pullback so far. The question is whether it's going to break to the downside and go underneath the previous low. If so, that would be negative. But if on the other hand, if it's able to get back above this moving averages and above this, then this starts to look positive to me. And obviously you want to see RSI get back above the 50 level. You can see it was a support and then it became a resistance. So you definitely want to see RSI above the 50 level like this and hold. And you can see MACD is beginning to curl. You want to see MACD move up, get back above the 0 line. So that's Microsoft. Apple has similar looking, they all have similar looking. You can see Apple rallied. So let's just hide these things. You can see Apple rallied, some rejection at the moving averages. So if Apple is able to do that, then this starts to look good. You see daily higher low being formed, and obviously you want to see RSI get back above. This is a must. There is no way it's going to rally if RSI remains below the 50 level. You can see that this was a support right here. Last time when RSI got back above the 50 level right here, and it remained above until RSI fell below 50 right here. So it must reclaim the 50 level. If it doesn't, then we can't expect it to move higher. And on a weekly basis, you can see that all of these are at the weekly 20. This, then Microsoft at the weekly 20. So it's not just Qqq and S&P 500, it's Microsoft, Apple, Tesla, all of them have pulled back to the, even Meta, if you look at Meta, it's been coming back to the weekly 20. So weekly 20 is an important level, and all of these are pulling back to their respective weekly 20. So I feel that weekly 20 could very well be a support, at least this time. Right. So another one I want to bring to your attention is Carvana, CVNA. So this one looks quite interesting to me. So if I just moving averages, you can see that it's consolidating. So if I just so you can see that it's been consolidating. It's got a positive looking setup. It's pulled back. Now it's trying to do something like this. If it's able to clear this level, which is around 41.50, 42, I think Carvana can go. And if you look at RSI, you can see that RSI has been kind of hovering around the 50 level. It closed just above 50. So this looks to me looks positive. You can see the MACD is beginning to curl right here. So I'll keep an eye on Carvana. If the market does have a positive bias, then I would expect this to break to the upside. But obviously, if the market sells off, then I wouldn't expect that. So this is one to keep an eye on. The other one to keep an eye on is this one, FSLY. So that is looking quite strong to me. Also, you can see that it's been making series of higher lows. Even during this market decline, it managed to move higher. So this is looking quite positive to me. Momentum indicators are quite positive. So I like the setup. And on the upside, then the target would be to around 25. It closed at around 22. So the target would be around 25. And that's based on the fact that it has traded between these two levels. So if you take the full measured move, that gives you around 25. So that would be the target I would be looking for. So these would be the stocks I'd be keeping an eye on. So overall, I've talked about a bearish scenario, a bullish scenario. So keep an eye on, keep your mind open to both. I know that you're going to see lots of bearish kind of a chart pattern. So let me show you what you're going to see on S&P 500. On S&P 500, you're going to see something like this. People are going to say, okay, so this is like a inverse head and shoulder. This is like a you're going to see a lot of those. Well, where is the neckline? Is this the neckline? So is this the neckline? Well, it only becomes in a head and shoulder if this line is broken. You're going to see lots of this, but what if it ends up being something like this? That could also happen. Just because it got a rejection doesn't mean that it's going to complete the head and shoulder pattern. It could just well do this. All right, I'll leave it at that. I thank you very much for watching the video. Please consider subscribing, following me on Twitter. I do provide update during market hours. Thank you very much.